Hey everybody, today we're going to have a very important talk about what programs are important to have on your computer as soon as you get it set up after that Windows 10 or 11 setup. Some of these are a little arbitrary and some of these are actually highly important to your gaming and computer experience. So to make everything simple, I have all 5 of them, categories right here on my desktop just for making everything simple. The first one would be Amd Ryzen Master. This is mainly just because it is a highly important program when it comes to overclocking your CPU or GPU. This is more or less what it would look like if you open it, depending on the version you're on. I believe this is actually a pretty recent version. I think that's pretty close to how it looks for me. And it shows you your temps, your CPU clock, and your CPU voltage, as well as what mode it's on. You can also change the clock speed and the voltage right there on your computer. You could also do this in the BIOS, but if you don't know how to go through your BIOS, this is certainly a much more user-friendly way of doing it. Intel has their own. It would be called Intel Extreme Tuning Utility. Let me see if I can find a picture that's actually not like tiny. So here we are. This is going to show you your turbo booster clock power. Wow, these are using some really sophisticated names on some of these. Still important. That's the voltage though. That is nice. And I believe there is a way for you to be able to change that on this. I haven't used Intel Extreme Tuning Utility myself, so I honestly couldn't tell you. There are other programs you can use. I think MSI has an afterburner for the GPU clock. I think EVGA does as well, but I can't remember if that's for the GPU or the CPU. That is kind of an important distinction. But there are plenty of programs that do this. This is just a certain category that's very helpful to have. I don't recommend overclocking at all. A lot of people like doing it, and it's something that's really nice to have sometimes. Now, a lot of people like using Task Manager on their Windows, but it is not the end-all, be-all of being able to see how your computer is doing. That would be GPU-Z. I use the ASUS version just because I like keeping it in theme with the all ASUS build that I have. Go check out that video. It was a great video. This just is a very quick look over of how your GPU is doing, certain things disabled or enabled, the vendor. It's also a good way of seeing if your GPU is real and not a fake that somebody just tried selling you for something else. Like, oh yeah, this is a 3070 Ti. It's a 1070. That would be a big problem. And that is a thing that's been happening. I think I've seen a few off of Wish. It does say other things than that, but that's pretty much the important stuff. It also does, if you hover over it, explain what you're seeing and all things like that. I do need to update this, and I'll do that later. But that's not the important part. The important part is these sensors here. I can't make this any bigger, so I'm sorry. It's kind of stuck at this size. That is my only gripe with this thing, is that it's so small, but it's great for if you're trying to check some things out. It gives you the GPU clock, the memory clock, GPU temperature, hotspots, memory temperatures. If you go down, it also gives you stuff for the CPU and also how much power your PCIe slots are using. How much power is your GPU chip power drawing away from everything else? How much load is your GPU under? It's at 30%, which is a little high. There is also advanced things here to show you a couple other things. Power limits, drivers. There's a lot that goes into this that's a little higher end than most people need. But if you're a basic user to a veteran user, this is highly important. The main two I honestly check, and it's just because for simple testing reasons, and also just make sure my computer is nice and temperature controlled, is the GPU temp and the CPU temp. Also keep in mind about the hotspot, because this has to do with, as it's saying here, GPU temperature as reported by the graphics drivers. You can also click this for a medium, a minimum, a max, an average, or just have it be live. I like it live. You can also go through and change it from Celsius to Fahrenheit to really however you want it. But that was program number 2. Number 3 is of a different variety. So we talked about overclocking. We talked about monitoring. What about making sure your computer is set up correctly? There's a lot of different ways you can do this. The 2 programs I use would be Furmark and Cinebench. Cinebench is going to be a heavy load on mainly the CPU, and Furmark is going to be a heavy load on the GPU. This is to make sure you have enough cooling, you have enough power going to where things need to get powered, and that everything is communicating correctly. Cinebench is honestly very beautiful, and I understand it decently well. Gives you a set of scores on the left, a system that matches yours, as well as later you can get your own score. Mine's generally above the identical system score. You can set minimum test durations. If you're testing for stability and, well, test throttling just to see if it's gonna throttle at any point. If it's just making sure your system's pretty stable, 30. If you're wanting to see what your max temperature is gonna be and where you're going to be probably getting at if you do long sessions of gaming, you probably want to do about an hour or so just to make sure you really get there. 30 minutes will get it pretty close, but that is an important thing. And you can do CPU single core or multi-core. Cinebench is also really easy, and it looks really cool when you open it. It's usually just set to this when you first download it, but you can honestly set it to anything. If you really wanted to, you could go past what your resolution is, but that's kind of pointless to me. If you're just trying to test to see how well your GPU is going to handle. And honestly, these are synthetic benchmarks. Synthetic benchmarks aren't going to give you all the details. They're going to give you most of them, though. That is important to distinguish these. However, not all computer programs are equal. For instance, Tiny Tina's Wonderland has its own in-game benchmark to give you a decent idea of how it works. It only lasts about 5-10 minutes. So to get a full general idea of how you would do on a game, I would honestly say just either going in and playing it for an hour or 2 and then looking, or running that benchmark for about an hour. And Tiny Tina's Wonderland, to my knowledge, isn't CPU or GPU intensive. It just is intensive. And it doesn't lean AMD or NVIDIA. It pretty much is very hard on the computer. Now, I like Geforce, Geforce Experience, just because I like to be able to really quickly see if I need a driver update for my graphics card and update the driver. Not everybody's going to agree on that, and we can just kind of agree to disagree. Some people don't want to get a new driver update every every other week. I would at least, that's kind of the only reason I have it here, is just so that I can do a kind of out of mind, I don't know how to explain it. I just don't want to think about it. I just want it to happen. I don't have to worry about it. I just know that I'm on the most up-to-date drivers, depending on which game I'm playing, because I do play very large amount of games. I have an entire corner of my computer just kind of like slaughtered with programs. It's funny, actually, in a way. Now, here's another one that I don't think everybody's going to agree with me. Bluestacks. Bluestacks, if you don't know about it, is a virtual machine that allows you to play mobile games as a mobile game option. So games like Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, other games that are only on mobile, it allows you to do this. There are several problems with this. A, it's not recommended to do this by any of the gaming companies that make the games. That might just be like a little terms of use kind of thing from Google and Apple. Apple and Google also don't recommend doing this because I don't really understand all the reasons. I don't think I know all the reasons. But it's just generally recommended not to do this unless, well, you want this experience and you have a decent idea of what you're doing. Bluestacks honestly is really simple. You have to go into your BIOS to enable the virtual machine ability, but after that, you log into your Google Store account. It does set it up on Google Store instead of Apple, just because Apple's a little more intensive on, well, what can do this. And then I have basically just 2 games that I play would be Star Wars Heroes and Hogwarts Mystery. But that's not the important part here. We're gonna go to settings. You can set how many cores are set to this, how much RAM is set to this, how much performance you want out of it, and the frame rates. You can set the display. I'm going to change this to 19 by 1080, which is what I have it at. You can also do pixel density. This does change a lot of things, like it's saying, and there is just the amount of like customization you can have on this compared to if you were on your own phone is just mind-boggling. It does allow you updates. I'd be careful with the updates. I've had updates that brick my entire computer. Well, not bricked my computer, it bricked this program. So what I had to do was undownload it, re-download it, and we're good. It's just a bit of a hassle. I don't know what's going on. BlueStacks isn't really that helpful when it comes to that kind of stuff. But it's a great program and I enjoy it. But those are my 5 programs that I greatly believe basically everybody that has a PC should have, especially the GPU-Z and the test bench, the benchmarks. Those 2 honestly will help you greatly in just making sure your computer is running correctly and that everything's good. Using them in tandem's the best option. Having GPU-Z running on the side while you're doing your benchmarks, just to see that everything matches and that everything is working how it's supposed to and not overheating, you're not thermal throttling. These are important things to know about your computer. We can get more into this on a little bit of a later date, so do get subscribed for that if you guys are interested. And if you guys have any recommendation on like a program that I missed or going a little more in depth on these programs that I have here or other programs like it, leave a comment down below. I am very willing to look into a program just to see how they do. But thank you guys again for tuning in. Don't forget to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel. Also, link is down below to the merch store. Go get some great merch. If you guys enjoyed this video, why don't you guys check out the act of balancing your PC? It was actually a really important video about how to know which parts were too much to compare to others, and also what parts are good for making sure you have great upgradability as your future goes with that computer. It's very helpful for most people, and I think you guys would enjoy watching it. Thank you guys again for tuning in, and have a good day.